What's up, everybody? Welcome to Political Fight Club. I'm Robert Durden, and in this episode, we're going to be talking about airstrikes and drone strikes. Now, a lot of people have been giving Biden big high fives and getting down on their knees to blow him because he got out of Afghanistan, and I want to give some credit because he did get ground troops out of there, but as we know, he's still going to keep private troops there, like CIA Black Ops and counterterrorism ops. And the other thing that we know he's going to do, because he said he's going to keep doing it, is airstriking the country. And in fact, a drone strike that he did recently killed 7 children, 10 people of the same family, when they blew up a Toyota Corolla that was allegedly linked to ISIS-K. So we know this is going to happen, and we know because of Daniel Hale, the whistleblower, that 90% of our casualties during these drone strikes are civilians, women and children, which was no different for this one. 7 children under the age of 7 died, blown to pieces by Joe Biden. So we're going to talk about the actual numbers. A study just came out from a military watchdog called Air Wars. I'm going to read to you here from Common Dreams. Kenny Stansel is doing great work over there. And I also will have at least one more episode, probably 2, up to you guys today. I got 1 diss track coming. And I also have the second part of Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I will read that to you out loud today, later on. So let's read to you here. The numbers are off the charts for how many airstrikes, or how many airstrikes, but also particularly how many civilian casualties the U.S. airstrikes have caused since 2001, since 9/11, the war on terror started. We're going to read to you here. Airstrikes conducted by the United States have killed between 22,000 and 48,000 civilians since September 11th of 2001, according to a report published Monday by Air Wars, a military watchdog that monitors and seeks to reduce civilian harm in violent conflict zones. The new analysis, released ahead of the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 terrorist attacks and the retaliatory launch of the so-called War on Terror, came just days after a U.S. drone strike killed at least 10 members of a single family in Kabul amid the withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan. Most media accounts point out that more than 7,000 U.S. service members have died in post-9/11 wars, but only some go on to state the massive civilian death toll and almost exclusively generalities. The researchers lament as they talk about they don't give actual numbers because they don't want people to know how many civilians we're actually killing with these bombings. While Brown University's Cost of War project estimates that over 387,000 civilians have been killed as a result of the War on Terror, Air Wars sought to answer a specific question: how many civilians have likely been killed by the U.S. airstrikes in the last 20 years? The answer, Air Wars found, is at least 22,700 and potentially as many as 48,308 civilians. Acknowledging the imprecision of their estimate, the group noted that the, quote, gap between these two figures reflects the many unknowns when it comes to civilian harm in war. Belligerents rarely track the effects of their own actions, and even then do so very poorly. It is left to local communities, civil society, and international agencies to count the costs, researchers wrote. The Pentagon has declared a minimum of 91,340 airstrikes in Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Pakistan, Somalia, Syria, and Yemen, 7 countries the U.S. militarily invaded or assaulted with bombs or drones in the past 20 years. Notable peaks occurred during the 2003 invasion of Iraq and between 2015 and 2017, the height of the military offensive against ISIS in Iraq, Syria, and Libya. Given the dubious nature of data supplied by the U.S. military, which notoriously undercounts civilian fatalities, no shit, Air Wars gathered together every reliable assessment of direct civilian harm caused by U.S. actions to construct a dataset that includes information from the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, the Iraq Bounty Count, the Nation, the United Nations Assistance Mission in Afghanistan, and their own previous studies. Quote, wherever possible, we sought to measure civilian harm just from U.S. airstrikes, but in some cases, such as the first years of the Iraq invasion, it was impossible to disaggregate airstrikes from artillery fire and other heavy munitions, which were therefore included. Likewise, in some U.S.-led coalitions, it was impossible to determine whether each individual strike was American, though U.S. air power has dominated all such campaigns, end quote. Based on its comprehensive review of credible sources, Air Wars identified 2003 as the deadliest year of the War on Terror, which a minimum of, quote, 5,529 civilians were reported to have been killed by U.S. actions. So that's an enormous number, guys. 50,000 possibly people that we've killed that didn't deserve it. For what? What worries me here, guys, is in the future, I don't think that the United States is going to be able to propagandize their populace into going into another war all, hail the conquering hero! You know, I don't think we're going to be able to manufacture consent to send ground troops in anywhere else. So I think airstrikes are going to be up a lot, regardless of whether it's Trump or Biden in office. It's going to be a lot of airstrikes, and a lot of these wars are going to be continued very hush-hush, very CIA, Black Ops, and, you know, off-the-record private contractors that go in and destabilize governments and destroy infrastructure and topple leaders of other governments. So I worry very much that this is going to become more like a bunch of shadow wars that we really don't see much in the media here. So we're going to have to be vigilant to make sure that that doesn't happen and that Biden stays out of these other countries like Somalia, Syria, Libya. Excuse me. Ragweed's in the air today. So I'm going to post a link to this below. We cannot allow this to continue. And just because Biden got public troops out of Afghanistan doesn't mean he's going to stop being an imperialist. They just upped his military budget $25 billion over last year, and it's nearly $40 billion higher than it was under Trump. So you don't up your military budget by tens of billions of dollars to pull out entirely of a country like that. No. They're just going to send hush-hush private troops into Afghanistan and other countries, and they're going to invade other countries, and we just have to make sure we keep our eyes peeled because there's no way they're going to televise it. They're not going to be able to get the American people who had like I think it was like a 12% favorability rating of the Afghanistan war. People like only 12%, 1 out of every 9 people in the country want to actually stay in Afghanistan. You're never going to be able to manufacture consent for us to send a whole bunch of troops into these countries anymore. So what they will do is they just won't advertise it. They won't tell the American public they're doing it. They'll keep upping the military budget and just keep it very hush-hush and do a lot of drone and airstrikes. That's what worries me. So I'm glad that this came out to show exactly the horrible effects and put some numbers with it. It is not at all surprising. Like, 50,000 people, that's like, you guys remember that scene in Troy where, like, the Greek army is walking up on the beach and you can't see any sand because there's so many people? It looks like a whole bunch of ants on an anthill. I think the Greek army was something like 100,000. So it's like half of that. Enough to cover the entire horizon and make the king of Troy shit his pants when he sees them walking up, and you feel the very ground moving beneath you when they walk. That's half of that is what we've killed in civilians via airstrikes, according to this study. So it's very sad, and of course it breaks my heart because we know that most of these civilians are, or we know that our drone strikes mostly kill civilians. 90%. Daniel Hale let us know that 90% of our casualties with drone strikes are civilians. Very sad. I will get at least one more episode to you guys today. I have 2 more written. I have to do a diss track on the Vanguard because they keep coming out and like calling everybody else out, like Jimmy Dore, on misinformation on ivermectin. And they said on their show, I don't think you should weigh in, man, if you don't have a medical degree or anything, or if you don't have any data. So I don't know why people are weighing in if they don't know anything about medicine. But here, let's do 3 fucking hours of what we think about ivermectin, even though we've done no research and have no medical background. I'm a doctor, and I found another meta-analysis that shows that ivermectin is very useful in treating COVID prophylactically, but also, like late stage in treating symptoms. I now have 2 meta-analyses, which none of these yuckos have any fucking evidence. And they even say in their live stream today, which they got ratioed on, by the way, that there's no data out there that shows there's no clinical studies on ivermectin. Yes, there are. There's so many that there's 2 meta-analyses that I have my hands on. What do you guys have to prove your point? So I'm going to have to body both of them. They give stoners such a bad name sometimes. God damn it. It's like, who's about to do that? Say you only are allowed to weigh in if you have a medical background, and then you weigh in even though you don't have a medical background, and then you hear people like me who do have a medical background and who have a bunch of data and call me a fucking idiot or a hack, whatever. I'm going to have to body them. And then the other episode we're going to do is the part 2 of Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I will read that to you later today. Keep fighting the good fight out there, guys. I'll talk to you later.